The unexpected union. The twin suns of Calixia Prime cast golden shadows across the crystal spires of the Imperial Palace. Empress Zara stood in her war room, studying holographic star charts that floated before her like captured constellations. At 9 feet tall, she was considered average height for a Calixian, her silver skin reflecting the light like polished metal. Her forearms moved gracefully as she manipulated the data streams, each hand working independently to process different information. The Calixian Empire controlled 17 star systems, with a military force that had never known defeat in over 3,000 years. Their warriors could survive in the vacuum of space for hours, their bodies naturally armored with scales that could deflect most energy weapons. They were the apex predators of the galaxy, or so everyone believed. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Her advisor, Commander Thren, entered the chamber with his head respectfully lowered. "The humans have arrived, Your Radiance. Their delegation awaits in the reception hall." Zara had heard of these humans. They were newcomers to the galactic stage, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. Most species took centuries to develop such technology, yet these soft creatures had managed it in mere decades. It was curious, though not particularly impressive by Calixian standards. She made her way to the reception hall, her footsteps echoing on the crystalline floor. The human delegation stood in a small cluster, looking almost comically tiny in the vast chamber designed for beings twice their size. There were 5 of them, all wearing simple blue uniforms that seemed primitive compared to the bioorganic armor of her guards. Ambassador Sarah Chen stepped forward, bowing in what Zara recognized as a gesture of respect. "Your Radiance, we are honored by your willingness to meet with us. Earth seeks peaceful relations with the great Calixian Empire." Zara studied the human woman. She was barely 5.5 feet tall, with no visible natural weapons or defenses. Her skin was soft and vulnerable, her bones fragile by Calixian standards. Yet there was something in her eyes, a sharpness that suggested intelligence beyond her physical limitations. Behind the ambassador stood 4 other humans. 3 were clearly military escorts, their postures rigid and alert despite being surrounded by warriors who could tear them apart with minimal effort. The 4th was different. He stood slightly apart, holding a datapad and observing everything with quiet intensity. He was taller than the others, perhaps 6 feet, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "This is my team," Ambassador Chen continued. "Our security detail and our translator, Marcus Webb. He has spent years studying Calixian culture and language." Marcus stepped forward and spoke in perfect Calixian, his pronunciation flawless despite lacking the dual vocal cords of her species. "It is an honor to stand before the Eternal Throne, Your Radiance. Your Empire's achievements in art and science are studied with great admiration on Earth." Zara was impressed despite herself. Few aliens could speak Calixian properly, and none had ever matched the subtle tonal variations that gave the language its true meaning. She found herself studying this quiet human more carefully. Unlike the others who seemed nervous or eager to impress, Marcus appeared completely calm, as if standing before one of the galaxy's most powerful rulers was just another day for him. The negotiations lasted several weeks. The humans wanted trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and most importantly, protection from the aggressive Darkari coalition that had been expanding toward human space. In exchange, they offered technology that seemed laughably primitive and resources that the Calixians could easily obtain elsewhere. During the long sessions, Zara noticed that while Ambassador Chen spoke, it was Marcus who truly guided the negotiations. He would whisper suggestions, point out details in documents, and occasionally interject with perfectly timed cultural observations that prevented misunderstandings. He never sought credit or attention, simply doing his job with quiet efficiency. One evening, Zara found him alone in the palace library, reading an ancient Calixian text about military history. The book was written in Old Calixian, a language that even most of her own people couldn't read anymore. "You continue to surprise me, human," she said, her forearms crossed in a gesture of curiosity. Marcus looked up and smiled, a gentle expression that transformed his serious face. "Your history is fascinating, Your Radiance. The Battle of the Void Serpents particularly interests me. The way General Krex used the enemy's strength against them was brilliant. You understand the tactical implications? Most who read that account see only the glory of victory." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Glory fades, but lessons endure. General Krex knew his forces were outnumbered 5-1. Instead of meeting strength with strength, he created conditions where numbers became a disadvantage. It reminds me of something we say on Earth about using wisdom when force isn't enough. They talked for hours that night about history, philosophy, and the nature of strength. Zara found herself looking forward to these conversations. Marcus had a way of seeing things from angles she hadn't considered, despite her centuries of experience. When Ambassador Chen proposed a marriage alliance to cement the treaty, suggesting that one of the human diplomats marry into Calixian nobility, Zara shocked everyone by volunteering herself. The entire court fell silent when she announced she would take Marcus Webb as her consort. "Your Radiance," Commander Thren had protested privately. "This is unprecedented." "A human? They are so fragile that our children accidentally injure them during play. How could such a being stand beside the eternal throne?" "Perhaps it is time we learned that strength comes in many forms," Zara had replied, though even she wasn't entirely sure why she felt so drawn to the quiet human translator. The wedding was a grand affair, with representatives from dozens of worlds attending. Marcus stood beside her during the ceremony, dwarfed by her height but showing no sign of intimidation. When the time came for the traditional display of strength where Calixian grooms would shatter stone or bend metal, Marcus simply presented her with a small device he had built, a holographic projector that displayed Earth's history of overcoming impossible odds. Some of the nobles laughed at this display, calling it the desperate gesture of a weak species. But Zara saw something different. She saw a people who had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have destroyed most civilizations. They had gone from cave dwellers to space travelers in a blink of cosmic time. The first year of their marriage was filled with adjustments. Marcus moved through the palace with careful precision, aware that a casual gesture from a Calixian could seriously injure him. The court treated him with barely concealed disdain, referring to him as the royal pet when they thought Zara wasn't listening. But Marcus never complained. He spent his days learning more about Calixian culture, helping with diplomatic correspondence and creating beautiful mathematical proofs that even impressed the imperial scientists. He attended every council meeting, though his suggestions were ignored. He stood beside Zara during military briefings, though the generals clearly thought his presence was a joke. What Zara didn't know was that Marcus spent his nights in encrypted communication with Earth, sending detailed reports about everything he observed. The data he transmitted wasn't about Calixian weaknesses or military secrets, but rather about their strengths, their culture, and their potential as allies. Everything changed when long-range sensors detected a massive fleet movement from the Darkari coalition. The Darkari were silicon-based lifeforms who consumed entire planets for resources, leaving nothing but dead rocks in their wake. They had been expanding steadily for decades, and now their path led directly through Calixian space toward Earth. Commander Thren delivered the intelligence report with grim efficiency. "They have assembled over 4,000 ships, Your Radiance. Our fleet numbers only 2,000, and intelligence suggests they have developed new weapons specifically designed to penetrate Calixian armor." The War Council convened immediately. Generals and admirals filled the chamber, their voices raised in heated debate about defensive strategies and attack vectors. Marcus sat in his usual corner taking notes on his datapad, seemingly invisible to the military leaders who discussed the fate of both their civilizations. "We should make a preemptive strike," General Voss argued, his scaled fist slamming the table. "Hit them before they reach our border systems. That would leave our core worlds vulnerable," Admiral Keen countered. "We should establish defensive positions and make them pay for every parsec they advance." Marcus raised his hand politely. The room fell silent, not out of respect but from surprise that he would dare speak in such a serious military discussion. "May I suggest something?" he asked in his quiet voice. General Voss laughed harshly. "The human wants to offer military advice? Perhaps you should return to your mathematics, little male." Marcus remained calm, though Zara noticed his fingers tighten slightly on his datapad. "The Darkari consume silicon-based resources, correct? What if we poisoned the well, so to speak?" The generals exchanged amused glances, but Zara gestured for him to continue. Marcus stood and approached the holographic display. "The Darkari will target our mining worlds first, the ones rich in silicon compounds. What if we seeded those worlds with a synthetic compound that appears to be high-grade silicon, but actually degrades their biological systems when consumed? They would weaken themselves with every planet they took. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Admiral Keen spoke slowly. That's actually not a terrible idea. But we don't have the technology to create such a compound. No, Marcus agreed. But Earth does. The hidden truth. The War Council erupted in laughter at Marcus's suggestion. The idea that Earth, with its primitive technology and fragile inhabitants, could provide something the mighty Calixian Empire couldn't create, was absurd to them. General Voss actually wiped tears from his 3 eyes, his whole body shaking with mirth. Your pet is amusing, Your Radiance, he managed between laughs. Perhaps we should send him to entertain the troops before battle. Zara felt anger rise within her, but before she could speak, alerts began screaming through the palace. The Darkari hadn't waited. Their fleet had jumped directly into Calixian space, bypassing the outer defenses through some unknown technology. They were only 3 days away from the capital. The laughter died instantly. Commander Thren pulled up the tactical display, showing thousands of red dots moving through their territory like a plague. They're using some kind of phase technology. Our border defenses never even detected them. Panic spread through the council chamber. If the Darkari could bypass their defenses so easily, the war was already lost. Several generals began discussing evacuation protocols, while others argued for a last stand at the capital. During the chaos, Zara noticed Marcus typing rapidly on his datapad. His expression had changed completely. Gone was the gentle, quiet demeanor she had known for over a year. His face was focused, intense, almost predatory. "Marcus," she said quietly, moving closer to him. "What are you doing?" He looked up at her and she saw something in his eyes she had never seen before. "Calling in support, Your Radiance. With your permission, I need to send a priority message to Earth. What support could Earth possibly provide? We need warships, not words." Marcus smiled, but it wasn't his usual warm expression. This was something sharper. "Trust me, Zara, please." She had never heard him use her name without her title before. Something in his tone made her nod. "Do what you must." The next 20 hours were chaos. The Darkari sent their demands. They wanted complete surrender, all Calixian technology, and most insultingly, they wanted the human consort as a trophy to demonstrate the weakness of both species. The message was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring maximum humiliation. "We will fight to the last warrior," General Voss declared. "Better death than such dishonor." "Your Radiance," Admiral Keen interrupted, "we're detecting new ships entering our space. They're human vessels." On the display, 50 small ships appeared at the edge of their system. The council members laughed bitterly. 50 human ships against 4,000 Darkari dreadnoughts. It was almost insulting. But Marcus stood up, his entire demeanor different. He walked to the center of the room with a confidence that made even the general step back. "Those aren't standard human vessels," he said clearly. "Your Radiance, honored council members, I need to tell you something about Earth." He touched his datapad and suddenly the main display changed. It showed Earth, but not as the Calixians knew it. This showed hidden installations, massive shipyards concealed in asteroid belts, and weapons platforms that dwarfed anything the Calixians had imagined. "Earth has been preparing for this day for 50 years, Marcus continued. "We knew that eventually we would face something like the Darkari. We knew we were physically weak compared to other species, so we adapted. We prepared, and we hid our true capabilities." The 50 ships on the sensor display suddenly became 100, then 200, then 500. Space itself seemed to ripple as more vessels materialized from some kind of advanced cloaking technology. "Impossible," Commander Thren whispered. "Those readings must be wrong." Marcus smiled coldly. "My name isn't actually Marcus Webb. I'm Admiral Marcus Webb of Earth's Strategic Defense Command. I was sent here not just as a translator, but as a forward observer and strategic coordinator. My mission was to evaluate the Calixian Empire and determine if you were worthy allies." Zara stared at her husband in shock. "You've been deceiving me?" Marcus turned to her and his expression softened slightly. "No, Zara. Everything between us has been real. My feelings for you, my respect for your people, all of it. But I'm also a soldier with a duty to protect Earth. And right now, protecting Earth means protecting Calixia." The human fleet continued to grow. 1,000 ships now filled the sensor display, each one using technology that shouldn't exist according to everything the Calixians knew about humans. "How?" General Voss demanded. "Your species achieved spaceflight only 50 years ago. Marcus pulled up historical data on the display. Humans have been warriors for our entire existence. We've never been the strongest or the fastest, but we've always been the most adaptable. When we realized we were entering a galaxy full of species physically superior to us, we did what humans always do. We got creative. The display showed human history but focused on their innovations in warfare. From the first use of tools as weapons to nuclear power, from cyber warfare to something called quantum entanglement communications. We reverse-engineered every piece of alien technology we could find, Marcus continued. We studied every species we encountered, learned their strengths and weaknesses, and we built our fleet in secret, knowing that appearing weak was our greatest defense. No one attacks the harmless species that poses no threat. The Darkari fleet was now within range of the capital. Their commander, Overlord Jex, sent another transmission demanding immediate surrender. His grotesque silicon form filled the display, radiating confidence in his assured victory. Marcus stepped forward. Open a channel to the Darkari fleet. You don't have that authority, General Voss protested. Zara raised her hand. Do it. The channel opened and Overlord Jex appeared again. He laughed when he saw Marcus. The pet speaks for the Calixians now. How pathetic you have become. Marcus's expression didn't change. Overlord Zex, I am Admiral Webb of Earth's Strategic Defense Command. You have entered sovereign space of our ally, the Calixian Empire. You have exactly one chance to withdraw. Jex laughed harder. Tiny human, your 50 ships are nothing. I will destroy them, then take you as my prize. Marcus touched his pad again. You might want to recount. The Darkari's laughter stopped as his sensors updated. The human fleet now showed 2,000 ships, with more appearing every second. But more than that, the energy readings from those ships were unlike anything in the Darkari database. You see, Marcus said conversationally, humans have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. We've been speaking very softly for 50 years. Would you like to see our stick? Without waiting for an answer, Marcus nodded to someone off screen. One of the human ships fired a single beam of light at a dead moon at the edge of the system. The moon didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, converted entirely to energy in a flash that temporarily blinded every sensor in the system. The council chamber was dead silent. Even Zara stared in shock at the display where a moon had been seconds before. Antimatter cascade technology, Marcus explained calmly. One shot can destroy a planet. We have 2,000 ships, each carrying multiple warheads. The Darkari fleet has 4,000 ships. The math is simple. Overlord Jex's silicon form actually seemed to pale. You're bluffing. No species would develop such weapons. Marcus's smile was cold. Humans split the atom just to see if we could. We poisoned our own planet learning to harness radiation. We created viruses as weapons. We developed chemical weapons so horrible we scared ourselves into banning them. Did you really think we would enter a galaxy full of predators without developing appropriate deterrents? The human ships moved into formation, surrounding the Darkari fleet in a perfect sphere. It was a tactical formation that shouldn't work, unless the ships had weapons that could fire through each other without causing damage. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus continued. You're going to turn your fleet around and leave Calixian space. You're going to return to your territory and never come back. If you don't, we'll demonstrate what 2,000 antimatter weapons can do to your silicon-based biology. This is impossible, Jex sputtered. Humans are weak. You're prey species. Marcus laughed, and it was a sound that made even the Calixian general step back. Weak? We evolved on a death world where everything tried to kill us. We survived ice ages, supervolcanoes, and plagues that wiped out 90% of our population. We went from hitting each other with rocks to splitting atoms in less than 10,000 years. We're not prey, Overlord. We're persistence predators, and you just became our prey. The standoff lasted 3 hours. The Darkari tried to call Marcus's bluff, but when 100 human ships simultaneously charged weapons, creating an energy signature that dwarfed a star, Jex ordered his fleet to retreat. They left Calixian space faster than they had arrived, and long-range sensors showed them returning to their own territory at maximum speed. The council chamber remained silent even after the Darkari were gone. Every eye was on Marcus, who had returned to his quiet, calm demeanor as if he hadn't just threatened to destroy an entire fleet. The human ships began to vanish back into their cloaking fields, disappearing as quickly as they had appeared. Within an hour, only the original 50 remained, looking once again like a small, harmless diplomatic escort. Zara finally found her voice. How many of those weapons do you actually have? Marcus turned to his wife with a gentle smile, the dangerous admiral facade fading away. Enough. But hopefully, we'll never need to use them. The threat is usually more powerful than the execution. General Voss stepped forward, and for the first time since Marcus had arrived on Calixia, he bowed to the human. I owe you an apology, Admiral Webb. I mocked your species as weak. I see now that strength has many forms. Marcus nodded respectfully. Your people are genuinely strong, General. You don't need to hide it, but humans learned long ago that when you can't win with strength, you win with intelligence. When you can't win with intelligence, you win with determination. And when you can't win with determination, you make sure the cost of fighting you is too high for anyone to pay. Commander Thren was studying the sensor data. These cloaking fields, this antimatter technology. Why share it with us now? Because, Marcus replied, looking at Zara with genuine affection. The Darkari won't be the last threat. The galaxy is full of predators, and Earth can't face them all alone. We need allies, real allies who we can trust. The Calixian Empire has proven itself honorable. You could have enslaved Earth when we first made contact, but you chose trade instead. That matters. Zara moved closer to her husband, her forearms wrapping around him carefully. You could have conquered us with this technology. Why didn't you? Marcus leaned into her embrace. Because conquest creates enemies, partnership creates allies, and because I fell in love with an empire that values honor as much as strength. Also, I specifically fell in love with you. The days that followed were filled with new negotiations. Earth and Calixia signed mutual defense treaties that went far beyond the original trade agreements. Human technology would be shared gradually, while Calixian biological advantages would help humans adapt to different environments. Marcus returned to his quiet role as Zara's consort, but now the court treated him with a mixture of respect and healthy caution. The quiet human who tended gardens and wrote mathematical proofs was also the admiral who had faced down 4,000 warships without blinking. One evening, as they stood on their balcony watching the twin suns set, Zara asked him a question that had been bothering her. Were you ever really afraid? When the Darkari fleet was bearing down on us, Marcus considered for a moment. Terrified. But humans have a saying that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action in spite of fear. I was afraid for you, for your people, for what would happen if we failed. But I knew we had prepared for this moment. And if the Darkari had called your bluff? Marcus smiled mysteriously. Who says I was bluffing? Zara stared at him. You mean you really would have? Marcus kissed her gently, a gesture they had adapted despite their physical differences. I would do anything to protect you and your people. That's what love means among humans. We might be physically weak, but we protect what we care about with everything we have. The future stretched before them, full of possibilities. The galaxy had learned that humans were not the weak prey species they appeared to be. They were something far more dangerous, predators who had learned to hide their fangs until needed. And in the crystal palace of Calixia Prime, an empress and her human consort stood together, proof that strength and wisdom could create something greater than either alone. The union that had begun as a political convenience had become something neither species had expected, a true partnership that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Marcus returned to his gardens and his books, content to be underestimated by those who didn't know better. But now everyone knew that behind the gentle smile and quiet demeanor was a warrior who would burn entire star systems to protect what he loved. The age of human expansion had begun, not through conquest but through alliance. And at its heart was a love story between an alien queen who had expected weakness and found strength, and a human who had shown that sometimes the greatest power is knowing when not to use it.